Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
Good afternoon. What we're talking about today now?
Afternoon, James. Today we have a special guest who is going to talk to us about how you can transform without using technology. Everyone is leaping towards technology as a solution for everything.
No, you need to be AI-powered, mate.
Sorry,
It is the future.
AI-powered technology is the
Yeah.
answer to everything. Well, our special guest, Paul Howley, has a different view, and he's going to share with us, A, why he thinks that approach is wrong, but B, how managers can do it differently. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Now, Paul, we know you very well, but for the benefit of the audience, do you want to give us a quick 30-second intro as to who are you and why they should listen to you?
Yeah, great. So I've worked in a number of different industries, actually: airlines, utilities, financial services. It was financial services where we all met, but across different roles: operations, technology, change, across all different levels of the organization. And it's through those 36 years of experience that I thought, actually, there is a problem here and there is another way potentially. So that's what we'll talk about today.
But Paul, just tell us as well, just to put the cherry on top of that, what were you trained as originally?
Originally, I was a radio astronomer. So I'm an astronomer by trade, but there were no jobs in that. So I ended up
Working with
for a
us.
bank.
Just to start off, most transformations start off with a tech decision, a new platform, new system, AI tool. From what you've seen, why do organizations reach for that as a solution?
Well, I think you can probably get seduced by some of the technology, and particularly if you go to conferences and things like that, they're all sponsored by technology vendors who will say this is the best thing since sliced bread. And there's a reason they're sponsoring those trade conferences, is they get a lot of money from people who think that, well, actually, I can use this technology to be transformational, rather than focusing on how, if you really focus on business outcomes, then that's transformational. And so it's the business outcomes rather than the technology that we should all be thinking about.
Well, I've got I agree, but I would just a couple of ands. I think there are two things going on here. So first off, if you take AI, which case in point is the current buzzword, but there's this huge fear of missing out. Everybody else is doing this. If I don't this, I am going to get left behind. I will have a strategic disadvantage. So on the one hand, you've got that gnawing away at people's minds, thinking everybody else is going to do it. The other thing is we do employ fairly senior people and give them big IT budgets, and then they have to earn their corns. So you've invariably got senior people banging about in organizations saying technology is the solution because their job depends on it. So when you add those two things to your pile, it's no wonder organizations go technology first.
Well, can I give an additional one? Yeah, I think people are quite lazy about things. And I'll tell you the reason why I say that is, in our last episode, we talked about some of the things that we'd learned over the first 100 conversations that we had on this podcast. And one of the things is improving the system. And it's a very complex environment you created. And so when you try to transform, you want to improve it, there's a lot of complexity to deal with. A simple solution is, let me buy a new system. Let me buy AI. So I think it's at a senior level, and I've done this. How do I solve this problem of trying to improve the results or change the course of this organization? It's often really easy to say, right, I'm going to put in a new piece of tech, rather than actually get to the root cause of the problem and the opportunities.
Yeah, well, I think you also need to look at what the outcomes of those choices are as well. And there's some really good, lots of research, but there's a McKinsey, one of the ones that are really good at this, which is, of those transformations, AI or digital or just systems implementation, what's the success rate? And all of the research says it's only about 30%. So 30% of transformations successfully achieve the business case outcomes. So there's a problem there.
I'm going further, Paul. Again, I would argue what you're really saying to me is only 70% of IT directors are prepared to admit it didn't work as well as it should have done, because I reckon the failure rate is much higher than that.
Fortunately, the three of us were always responsible for delivering transformations in the 30%, obviously. But that aside, why do you think that is the case? What's your view, Paul, as to why 70% don't deliver what they promise?
Well, it's because people forget the business outcomes. So
Yeah.
you set off with this business case, which tends to be financially motivated because you're
Yeah.
going to make an investment, you want a return on investment. What very quickly gets lost is the why you're actually doing it. You're doing it for customers. So what I've observed over time is that you then get into the nuts and bolts of, I'm now choosing a technology to be able to implement. And what I've actually lost sight of is why I was doing it in the first place. And again, my observation of the 30% that are successful is they never lose sight of the customer and they never lose sight of the outcomes. And every decision is always about those outcomes.
Another point here, Paul, which is it's this whole debate about efficiency versus effectiveness, because a lot of people putting the technology just to chase cost savings. So it's about doing the same thing more efficiently rather than being more effective doing the right thing, which is your point about focusing on the customer. But the minute it's very easy to save money in an organization, but doing it successfully is a totally different thing altogether.
Yeah. We put together this transformational change. We're in the honeymoon period where we go, actually, we really want to make a difference for customers and for the organization. And then the first thing that people think is, well, how can I achieve this or these outcomes with technology? And I think that's the wrong way of looking at it, actually, is whenever I've approached here's an outcome we want to achieve, the hierarchy is, can I, as whatever level I'm in the organization, but can I actually make a change to this process myself to achieve the outcomes? And actually, quite a lot of the time, you find the answer to that is yes. But if we assume that's the start of the hierarchy and you go, well, actually, I can't make it myself, then the next one is, well, could I get some specialist help to re-engineer the process to achieve those outcomes? Third part of the hierarchy is, well, no, if I can't do it just for process, then can I achieve the outcomes with a small technology change? And sort of the last part of the hierarchy is, well, do I need a major technology change to achieve the outcomes? And my observation around that is that we'll start at hierarchy 4, which is, or particularly most senior leadership teams that I've worked with would say, I need a major technology change to achieve these outcomes, when very often the answer is you don't.
Yeah, but there's a conceit here, Paul, isn't there? Which is a major technology change is a big strategic change. Whereas buggering about going and looking at your policies and your procedures, and it's what clipboard monkeys do, isn't it? Right? That's not strategic. And so you've got that going on in people's minds. That's what their ego is telling them. So actually, they don't want to pin their career on non-strategic stuff. They want to be bold and they want to be strategic and they want to make big moves. And we've got all of that going on in our head, and it just blinds us to what the reality is.
It still comes back to me a lot of the time. There's an easy answer to these things. I remember doing in one organization I worked with, we did the annual sweep round of what all the projects that everyone wanted to have. And there was a risk tool that the risk team wanted. There was a project management tool that the project management team needed. There was a finance tool that the finance team needed. Everyone wanted a tool. It's like, we've got plenty of tools here. You don't need all this. Yeah.
Well, it depends on the definition of tool.
It was, either definition was true.
You've got loads of them.
Loads of tools. But the point being, rather than try and unpick the process or do what you were talking about, Paul, which is like, can I do this with a small change or can I do this with a process change? It was actually, it's all quite hard. It's more complicated. Let's just layer some form of tech along the top of it, forgetting that actually when you layer the tech across complexity, it doesn't actually solve the problem. It can make the problem worse sometimes.
So you've got 4 things going on then, I think is where we come to conclusion. First is you've got just lazy management. Pick the easiest solution. The easiest solution looks like a big tech solution. You've got this whole fear of missing out thing going on. You've got a whole load of ego. And then to your point, Paul, you've got a huge sales pressure, all these big sponsoring stuff, and all of those things combined to drive this whole tech first approach to life.
Paul, a lot of our audience are middle managers. They don't have a tech budget. So they're not going to be able to go and get a new tool or a new AI friend or whatever. What would be your advice to those people caught in the middle of an organization? You've got change filtering down from on high, but you've got your problems that you need to solve.
I think that there's an opportunity for us, if we're the middle managers, we can actually be seen as really heroic in our organizations because we can achieve a transformation in customer outcomes, customer experience without the cost or indeed the long time scales of major technology investments. And that's what I really want to focus on. Is there are things we can all do, however small a part of the process we actually own, that make things transformationally better without all of that cost of the tech.
Let me just play devil's advocate. So what you're saying, Paul, is we ought to look at customer outcomes, but I've got my bosses on my back and they're all just worried about cost. That's all he's interested in. So if he's only worried about cost, why should I be looking at customer outcomes?
Because if I remove waste from all of these processes, then actually the cost goes down. So not only are you improving the experience, you're also improving the financial sustainability of the organization as well. So if you're framing it, I'm working on customer outcomes, and one of the benefits is that it will be more effective, then that's a good way to have a conversation with senior management about why I should be given some license to do this.
Yeah, as one of my old bosses said to me, we never have time to do it properly, but we always seem to have time to do it twice.
Everyone's ears pricked up, Paul, when you said, about being heroes. How would you suggest that people approach becoming heroes? Have you got a foolproof method for us?
I've got a case study, if that would be helpful, because we can go through a case study and then I'll draw out some of the lessons.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So it's a case study from financial services for mortgage lending. Many of us have obviously taken out mortgages, and we know that process can be a bit fraught. It's also a very complicated process. So most of us, actually, when we take out a mortgage, then we go and use a broker to arrange all of that lending. Broker goes and look at the whole of the market, tells us what the best deal is, and then we go through the process of getting an offer, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly, any mortgage lender, the people who are lending the money, they want brokers to be happy. They're not going to recommend a lender to their customer, us, if they're concerned about the experience and the service that the customer will get. And so this case study, actually, the story starts with unhappy brokers. And so it's a case study I've been personally involved in. So talk through that and sort of explain why we went to an approach that said, actually, we can fix this without technology.
So just before you get into that question, so you had unhappy brokers. What were they saying about you at that point?
So not very nice things, actually. In fact, one broker wrote to the chief exec and said, I would rather set myself on fire than give you any more business.
So pretty clear.
Yeah, a burning platform, if you like. We were measuring net promoter score. How likely would you be to recommend this company? We were -11, which was catastrophically bad when you're trying to get people to convince the broker to use you instead. So whole host of reasons. And fortunately, we as an organization viewed that as that's really bad and it needs fixing.
Our podcast is all about helping people, teams and organisations perform better and enjoy work more.
And I go as far as saying that we believe that everyone and every team has the potential to transform their performance by optimising what they currently do.
So if you'd like to discuss how we can help you transform your performance, then get in touch or maybe check out our website. We also do speaking events, mentoring and advice work as well. So Paul, tell us, what did you do about that challenge then?
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, it's probably worth, back to the earlier conversations, is the first view was, we need a technology solution for this.
Yeah.
Because actually, what this is, we need a new technology platform that will fix everything.
Yeah.
And there's lots of good technology platforms around that do these digital transformations. Problem with that is, one, lots of money, and with all of these kind of investments, they're 18 plus months away, or quite often quite longer. So you're saying, well, I'm going to live with this service for 2.5, 2 years, and that's just not possible. So I'd just come into the organization as an operational leader and met with the team, the people who are actually running all of the service and the process, and says, what do you think we should do? And they actually said, well, we think we can fix this. We don't need the technology. And so I represented them and said to the senior leaders, and so I then did go into the boardroom or the exec room and actually said, look, I think we can get to top quartile service position against the rest of the industry without technology. And
sorry again. You can ask my question, as some people told you. Go on. I was going to say, what did they say that made you think that?
Well, what did the team say? They're the ones that were right at the coalface of the organisation, and they were the ones that were dealing with customers, and they were the ones who said, look, there's a better way, and we think there's a better way. We need some support to be able to find that better way, because we're so busy that we don't have the time or the support to be able to make the changes we think that we need. And so the people crying out for help, going, we think we can make this better, but we need some support to be able to make it better.
Sorry, but what you're really saying is the people on the shop floor wanted to fix this and they knew how to do it. But usually the attitude is, well, the problem is then they're not working hard enough.
I have heard that said before, yes. And that's why I was in the privileged position of being able to go and say, I think there's a different way. We don't need this technology solution. We can fix it a lot faster than if we look at a technology solution. And I was lucky that the senior leadership team bought into that ambition, partly because it came from the people who were running the process who said, we can fix it, but also because it was going to be done in a lot less time and a fraction of the cost of the technology solutions.
So Paul, you've got the frontline people saying, yeah, we can do this, we can fix it. You've influenced the senior people to give the advice. What did you actually change then?
Yeah, so we started looking at people, policy, and process. So I'll start with the process first. So brought in some operational excellence, sort of lean experts to analyze that process. What's going on? What's going wrong? We found there were 28 different ways of processing that mortgage application, and also there were handoffs between teams. So my team said, I've got a green service level here. I'm doing everything within this. And the next team saying, I've got a green service level as well. So everybody was reporting green service levels, but there were handoffs. So if I'm a broker and it's going from team to team to team, then the service level from my perspective is bright red.
Right.
And so, those handoffs meant there were multiple days waiting for teams to pick up their piece of the process. So that's process broken.
Yeah.
Next bit was policy.
Yeah.
So lots of ghost policy, I call it, a not actual policy, but because someone had been penalised once upon a time in the past for something, then they put an unwritten step into their processes and into their policies. It's the consequence of overzealous quality teams. And so you get a culture where you're trying to find things that are wrong for performance management rather than a culture where you're trying to be a coach. So that's the sort of the policy area.
I had a great example of this dealing with a different company, Paul, was they wanted some forms filling in, which they sent me electronically. So I sent them back electronically. They wrote back to me and said, you haven't filled them in quite right. So we did a couple of rounds of this. And then when I finally got them right, they wrote back to me and said, we can't accept the forms until you send us a hard copy of them. It's like, why have we just done that dance for ages? But it's that sort of thing that you mean, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
One man's waste is another man's career.
So final bit was people. So the team, it was split between customer service representatives who'd speak to the brokers and then underwriters who'd make all of the decisions. And if I'm a broker, I could not speak to the decision maker, the underwriter. And so what you had was customer service people were trying to justify or interpret why an underwriter might have said no. And brokers hated that. And so you combine all of those, the process, the policy, the people, and what you saw was that overall experience of being designed for the benefit of the organisation, not for the benefit of the broker and the customer.
So, question, Paul, is it possible to say which of those three you think had the biggest impact?
Actually, I'd say it's probably the people. They're all aligned, but it would be the people side, which was because of the way we decided to structure that, we'd lost sight of what was needed for the customer, and then everything else fell out of that because of that decision. The process was broken because you now had handoffs. It all came down from the decision of how I'm going to structure my team.
But presumably that decision that originally was made is a cost saving because somebody will have had it in their minds that you've got these underwriters who are very highly skilled, so we need to keep them busy, and the way to keep them busy is to keep them away from the customer and have somebody at the front end triaging.
That is exactly why that had been done.
Yeah. So the whole chasing costs, you chase costs and that actually runs away with you.
And I think that in so many organizations that we work with, that access to decision makers is always a key thing. People, whether they're customers or brokers, they want to understand and talk to the decision makers, not a go-between. And so that whole thing about who's talking to the customer, who's triaging, that's where a lot of the waste accumulates, really.
Yeah. And so that's exactly what we did to fix it, which was process, policy, and people, and not technology. So on the process side, we re-engineered those to one version of the process from the 28 that we did have. Removed all of the handoffs. So I described it before as a production line process with multiple people touching the application, but we changed that to case management. So also just very simple thing, a proactive call at the beginning of the application, at the start of that, to the broker from me as the case manager going, look, I'm going to be dealing with the case, and this is what I will need from you. So then there's no ambiguity, and I set all the expectations up front. Very simple changes, but a huge difference to that service experience.
Yeah.
So that was process. Policy. So removed all of the ghost policy that I talked about, the erroneous policy that built up, and streamlined all of the existing policy guide, retrained everybody in those new policy and procedures, and crucially also changed the quality assurance process. It had been more about performance management, and we actually changed that to focus on customer outcomes. So my role in the quality team is as a guide or a coach rather than being the police.
Yeah.
And very much about training about why we need the policy rather than you just must follow this policy. It's why are we here? People. So that's the third element of this. So talked earlier about the broker's big complaint was I can't speak to the decision maker, the underwriter in this case. So we made everyone an underwriter. We trained every customer service representative to have underwriting skills and every underwriter to have customer service skills. But everyone there now, they had a career progression path as well, that they could sort of demonstrate their technical and customer skills and progress in a way that previously they hadn't been able to do as well. So that was quite transformational. It meant I could come through as a broker now and talk to the decision maker.
Makes sense.
So a lot of what you've said is counterintuitive, right? So you train everybody as underwriters. So you do that when your costs are going to rise. So you get pushback against that. Or another one will be all of this shadow policy, and totally agree, obviously loads of it, but somebody has put that in there for a purpose. So you'll have some QA guy or technical quality, or whatever they call themselves, saying, oh, no, you've got to leave all of that because it's there for a purpose. But how did you get over all that pushback?
And well, partly because what we'd said is, we think we can do this better because the people who actually were running the process were saying, we believe we can make this better. And so there's an element of being a bit brave to a certain extent, which is I'm trusting myself and I'm trusting the team when we say we can make it better, that we will. So there is an element of pushback because it is counterintuitive, perhaps. But here's where, as sort of middle managers, to be heroic, we also need to be brave. We need to actually trust that we know what we're talking about and therefore trust us to try this. Because the alternative actually is you then have to go and look at a very big technology project. So trust us to do this. And if we fail, it's been a little bit of time, but not a lot of money. If we're successful, it's really beneficial.
But how did you overcome the organisational barriers to get this done, Paul?
This was very much the idea of the team, and said, look, we think, and actually all of those colleagues there as well who were going, we're quite happy. If I'm a customer service person and I'm getting a broker giving me it in the neck all of the time, and then I say, you're not going to get it in the neck from the broker all the time because we're going to train you to have all the answers to their questions. You go, yeah, I'll buy that. But we also had to do quite a lot of hearts and minds as well, which is, what's my job if I am in the organization? It's not to process a mortgage, it's to help customers buy their dream homes. And when you can inspire people like that, then you get a really big buy-in from the organization as well. So it was as much about the way we talked about the challenge, as well as then sort of inspired people to go, I want to be part of this journey. And so we use that language with every colleague, people who are talking to customers, and also we use that language at the senior levels as well.
Okay, but so a lot of the change management was really about educating people on what was really going on.
So, Paul, that's a fantastic story about what you did. So you got to tell us two things. What did your MPS end up at? And what are the key takeaways that you would say are applicable to any manager of any team who's trying to improve performance?
Yeah, so the net promoter score went from -11, as we said, really bad. It went to +80, so a 91-point improvement, which is why I quite like talking about the case study. And it does show, if you look at people, policy and process, you can make really transformational outcomes without the use of technology. What it also meant was, because brokers now went, this service is great, you saw a benefit in the price. So there was price elasticity as well. Even when you weren't the best price, they still choose you because you go, the service is going to be great here. So you've got that, top line benefit in income that's coming through there as well. And it was more efficient. So all of this, so it was about 20% cost reduction per mortgage application there as well. So you've got, it's much more efficient. Service is great. And then you've got the price elasticity there as well. So financially, a really good outcome. And I think the most important lesson I take from all of that is whatever my role in the organization, I can positively impact customer outcomes without needing to wait for technology. And even if I own a very small part of the process, if you think you can do it better, then I would absolutely bet that you're right. So I think I can do it better. We talked about being heroic, and I think we can all be seen as heroic by saying, I think it can be done better, and I will make it happen. And that last bit, in my experience, is really important, because we can all complain about a process, but it just takes some guts to actually say, I'll make that change happen. And that's where the bravery comes in. But my experience, then actually people who take the initiative and say, I will make that happen, actually it tends to be welcomed by senior leaders as well.
And it sounds simple, but actually the danger is that you've always been downtrodden. No one listens to you. It's all about big projects. It's quite easy to lose sight of, actually, I think I can make a difference. And then you do have to be a little bit brave to stick your hand up and say, yeah, I can improve this part of the business. I can improve my team. And then the follow through in terms of making it happen and the delivery of that, it does take some kind of resilience, doesn't it, at the end of the day to do that?
Yes, it does. That's why I use the word bravery, because I think it is brave, but then equally the reward is great, not just for the customer, but for me personally. If I think, well, I made that change, I made that difference to customers. It's one of the other benefits that we found, actually, the engagement of colleagues in the process and engagement of my team went up hugely when we were talking to people about why we were doing things rather than what are you doing.
And I'm going to violently agree with you, Paul. For me, I think the two most important things are, number one, work out who your bloody customer is and what they want. So you're focused on the right thing, which goes back to the point we'll always talk about, which is purpose. But what are you here to do? Yeah. And if you're running a call center, your purpose is not to answer the flipping call in 20 seconds. Your purpose is to solve the customer's query. So what does the customer want? Because if you start focusing on that, only good things will happen. But the other thing, I think, again, to reiterate what you said, it's great to take some pride in what you do. Because if you feel like you're doing a good job, it's really, what's the word I'm looking for, contagious. Everybody wants to get a part of it.
And I think just to pick up on one other point that you made, or a lot of what you're talking about was you, senior leaders, team managers, whoever, listening to the people on the front line who really serve the end customer about what gets in their way. And then sometimes the solutions are actually counterintuitive to what somebody might think, but actually those counterintuitive solutions often are where the best answers lie.
I was going to say, that's why you need to think of it holistically, though, because you need to think about the policy, the process, and the way that people are organised as well. Because if you tinker with one bit of that system, you might break something else. So you need to think about the whole system when you're looking at that. And a system can be a big system like mortgage lending, or it can be very small. It's just the bit that I control within my part of the process.
Right. So, Paul, in summary then, what would you say are the key things that people need to do if they're sitting in an organisation that's not working too well?
Carefully document what are the desired outcomes. So desired outcomes for the customer, it could be desired outcomes for transformation, but what is it that you're trying to do? So be really clear on that. Then look at the hierarchy of options that we talked about earlier to achieve those outcomes. And remembering, can I do the process myself? Could I get some help to do that process? Might need a little bit of technology. And only at the last resort, ask a senior leader to go and make a major technology choice. To achieve the outcomes, then look at the people, look at the policy, look at the process, but never, ever lose sight of the outcomes and assess them in every team meeting that you have. Or if you're running it as a project, assess those outcomes in every project steering. Always talk about it in your huddles. So those are the outcomes, never lose sight of them. And then organize your team to benefit the customer, not what is easiest for the organization. It's, is this set up in the way that is best to deal with the customer? And the best people to answer that question are the people that actually speak to customers.
And the way you describe it, Paul, throughout, any manager can do it, but it does take bravery.
It does.
Okay, that was fascinating, Paul. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers now.
We cover a whole host of topics on this podcast,
From purpose to corporate jargon.
but always focused on one thing: getting the job done well.
Easier said than done. So if you've got unhappy customers or employees, bosses or regulators breathing down your neck,
If your backlogs are out of control and your costs are spiralling, and that big IT transformation project that you've been promised just keeps failing to deliver,
we can help. If you need to improve your performance, your team's performance, or your organisation's, get in touch at jimmy@ajobdonewell.com.
or James@jobdonewell.com.